Welcome to the another revision series video. So yes, we had completed SS 710, and the playlist link is given in the description box, and also the chart link is also given in the description box. And give the thumbs up button. So yes, as you can see on the screen, we are going to start with essay 620. The name of the same is using the work of an auditor's expert. There are two types of expert. Don't make any mistake in this. There are two types of expert. One is the auditor's expert and another one is the management expert. About that also I will give you some brief idea in this essay itself. I did again this essay also in three different parts, that is general and audit procedures and references. So firstly, in general, I'm going to cover the few definitions or few idea about the essay, right? So first one is about the auditor's expert. What does the auditor's expert mean? Here I told you there are two types of expert: auditor's expert and management expert. In case of the auditor's expert, the expert who is having the expertise except in field of the accounting and auditing. As in accounting and auditing, the auditor himself is only the expert. So other than the expert in accounting or auditing, and management expert is the expert who is been hired by the management and who is the working for the entity, and the auditor's expert is being hired by the auditor and working for the auditor, and that expert may be the internal expert or maybe the external expert of the auditor. That what does means internal expert? Then if there is any chartered accountants firm, suppose ABC and company, and in that case only there is one actuary hired in that firm, so he is the internal expert. And if the actuary who is not working in the firm and who is the outside of the firm, we are taking his help, then he is known as the external expert. Okay, I hope you are clear about this. Then this essay is not applicable here when the expert is the expert of the accounts and auditing, and as I only told you that as he is only the expert of accounting and auditing, then other one who is expert in the same is not the auditor's expert. He assistant or he is his team member. Then second one is management expert. For management expert, sorry, for management expert, don't always remember SA 500 will be applicable. Okay, for the management expert, SA 500 will be applicable. Yes. Then the auditor's responsibility. Here, if the auditor is using the work of the expert, that doesn't mean he is relieved from his responsibility. Like वो ऐसा नहीं बोल सकता है कि ये काम मैंने नहीं किया, ये तो एक्सपर्ट ने करके रखा है. नो मैन, काम किसी ने भी किया है. You are the responsible for the audit report or the entity's financial statements. Okay, yes, so we are done with the general part. Next, audit procedures part. Firstly, when we had decided that we are going to use the work of the expert, then we have to evaluate his adequacy. His adequacy can be evaluated by the following points. Firstly, we have to see whether the expert is having that skills, that whether he is actually the actuary, and whether he is objective, that means, and independence, that means he know what is his work and he know how to do it, and he should be independent of the entity. If he is not independent of the entity, then he will not give the proper reporting, right? Then we have to understand his field, and as per that we have to decide that whether it is adequate or not, his work is adequate or not for the us, right? Then if we have decided that we are going to use his work, then we have to do the written agreement. Written agreement about the four things: nature and the scope and the objective of the work, that what work you have to perform, the roles and responsibility of both of auditor and of the expert, and timing of the communication, that when auditor have to report or communicate with the auditor, expert have to report the auditor. Then confidentiality, expert have to maintain the confidentiality about the matters in the audit, right? To evaluate the adequacy can be evaluated by the reasonableness of the findings, that he had did something work and he had find something, that how much reasonable it is. We have to find the reasonableness of the three things. First is the reasonableness of the findings, and the reasonableness of the assumptions he had made, and the reasonableness of the source of data, that from which he is gathering the information, reasonable of the source of the data, right? And the findings he had made here should be consistent. Likewise, if I'm getting the audit evidence of same thing from the data X, and he had find it out from the data Y, then both should be consistent. There should not be any difference between the evidence found out from the data X and data Y, right? Next is, if he find that his work is not adequate, then he have to do some further procedures, right? He have to do some further procedures. And if he find that there is the risk of material misstatement, then he have to make the additional procedures as find perfect by him. Yes, so we are done with the two parts. First is general, in that auditors expert, management expert, and essay where it is not applicable, and auditor's responsibility. Then in case of the audit procedures, he have to firstly decide whether to use the work, and if he had decided, then he have to evaluate the adequacy. He have to firstly see that his skills, his objectivity, and his independence from the entity. Then understand the field of his work and its adequacy, and then afterwards he have to do the written agreement. In that, he have to include what: nature, scope, and objective of his work, roles and responsibility, timings of the communication, and confidentiality. Then adequacy will be evaluated less of what: of findings, of assumptions, and source of the data, and the consistency of the findings, the audit evidence obtained from the another data, then it should be consistent, right? Then if the work is not adequate, he have to perform the further procedures, and he have to consider the risk of the material misstatement and significance of his work, and based on that, he have to do the additional procedures. As last part, that is the reference. Then in a reference part, firstly, if the opinion is modified by him and opinion is unmodified by him, if the opinion is unmodified, then what is the need of stating that auditor has did his work? Already the responsibilities of the auditor only, so there is no need to state in the unmodified and even in the modified. But in case if law or regulation states that you have to state, then you have to give the reference if it is required by the law in case of the unmodified opinion. And in case of the modified opinion, he should refer, but only for the understanding of the users, only for the understanding of the user. That does not reduce, that does auditor's responsibility. As we had discussed in general part only, that auditor is the only responsible person, then he does not reduce his responsibility by giving the reference. The reference is only for the user's understanding. So yes, 620 is completed. I hope you had enjoyed with me.